Well, we've reached that point again in our lives where we have to sit back and talk about a Star Wars show, something that feels almost tedious in today's climate. Look, I get why they're not doing movies. I don't think that should be the case because it's Star Wars, but I get it. You've made controversial films recently. Also, you want to push the TV thing on Disney Plus. Sure, I get it too. But you haven't really impressed with some of your recent outings. The Book of Boba Fett was really weird. Not the good kind of weird. The Obi-Wan Kenobi series didn't have anything to latch on to that was fun. Just old guys you know, doing things you knew. So it really put a bad taste in the mouth of a lot of people. Myself included, I was not excited for anything really in the Star Wars umbrella because of how boring those two shows were. So when Andor was announced, I was like, I get it. Diego Luna's a great get. Tony Gilroy's a great get. That team knows how to work together, clearly. But can you make that matter? Can you make the prequel to The Guy We Know Dies matter? How can you do that? And then they're like, it's 12 episodes, longer than any other one we've done so far. It's going to be 2 seasons. I'm like, okay, that means they must have had a vision in mind. It wasn't just like a story we had to stretch out. We actually had a narrative to tell. So the show came out. The first couple episodes dropped, and I'm like, okay, I see why this is getting buzz. It's creative, it's fun. Past the 3rd episode, when it became weekly up until today, when this video comes out, is the finale. I think this is the best thing Star Wars has made in ages. It is the most beautifully made. It is the most handcrafted. It feels like an actual idea, and somebody said, what if this was a good thing? What if we made something that isn't just content that feels like a reference for you to know or something for you to latch onto because we have to say hello there or the Boba Fett shit? What if we just tried something and had something to say and we just made a creative story that is impactful and doesn't have a one-liner to end every scene? Turns out you do something really freaking great. Andor is, without a doubt, the best piece of content to come out of the Disney, Star Wars, whatever. I'm a huge supporter of The Last Jedi, but even I know there are certain moments in there I would change. This is perfect to a T. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's the best thing ever made. It changes the game. What I think it does is remind people we used to have good stories, and we actually used to care about narratives that were intense and sprawling. This is the Star Wars equivalent of something like The Americans mixed in with just like an intense political thriller in this giant scale. It is beautiful and impactful and political. Now here's the thing, let's make this abundantly clear. Tony Gilroy has come out and said this show represents the Trump era. And when you watch this, it certainly does. There's a couple of things I really thought about watching this series actually unfold. It is post-Trump where this maniacal figure it has like this intense grip on the planet. People live in fear of this police state that could hurt them. Coming out of the Black Lives Matter movement and everything associated with that too, how police are interpreted on screen, you feel that too. Like this is very much like post the Black Lives Matter movement when it's still precedent and still going on, but when it was like the big riots and people pushing against this brutality that they are seeing, it feels like that too, because no other piece of Star Wars media has perfectly depicted the fear the Empire can instow on you in such small detail. It does it on the grand scale where it's just like, okay, they've took control of everything. You're scared to walk down the streets. You are frightened at the sight of a stormtrooper, but even on like the small scale where you see things like the Empire faking somebody's like death because their ship explodes unexpectedly when they actually have a prisoner locked away, you're like, whoa, that is terrifying. When one TIE fighter flies overhead when you're trying to sneak onto a base, you feel the fear of that. This show, more than any other, has bestowed the fear of the Empire into every scene, into every presence. It is terrifying. It is powerful, and it feels a lot like something made today. And that's the other thing too. It is such a perfectly distilled version of a George Lucas story. Because here's the thing about George Lucas. he is very forefront in saying, no, yeah, stormtroopers are Nazis, they're bad guys, they're fascists, they're evil. That's what they are. Like, and the rebels are this like fringe guerrilla group operating on the sidelines in the shadows that you can't see. They're not a big operation. The rebel alliance is always supposed to be like the small fringe group of people rebelling against the powers that be. You feel that perfectly in every secretive thing that is going on, both in terms of the Empire and the rebels. Every shady business dealing, every like boardroom meeting, every back alley meeting. It's so intense. And the way it just plays against itself, where the Empire stuff is a bunch of these rich tyrants in like these business conferences talking about this disgusting shit, with the rebels in like these dark corridors in the shadows, just like, we have to find a way to change this. It is so good at distilling that into small moments. And it's like, it feels like actual episodes where the story ends where it needs to get us to next week. You don't need to show violence to get there. The most intense moments of this show are when there's nobody shooting guns or using lightsabers. It's just people talking, showing the fear they have. And then there's this whole sub-story of just like a prison state. And I'm like, what are you doing? You shouldn't be allowed to go this hard. It's that thing where you just start to see art can actually matter when you're so used to having your Boba Fett's, your Mandalorians, and your Obi-Wans. You have a show like this come out that's like, this is actually saying something about today's climate, where a lot of people feel like they are the rebels trying to work around the situation they're dealing with in this era of political power. It's so powerful that way and intense. And it depicts both the rebels and the Empire in these intensely powerful ways. And you see the fanatics on both sides. What the show does so perfectly is balance the people. They're like, this is why I support the Rebel Alliance. This is like, they took land from my family. They have pushed us out of this location. They have gotten greedy and fat, and they have just stayed here and enacted their power to where nobody feels safe and nobody feels like anything can happen. So you understand why every person does what they do for this alliance. It is cool that way. And you also feel it for the Empire, where it's like, I want order. This guy humiliated me. I want him to get taken down. I want to move up in a power place that's going to hurt me, and I need to find a way to rise to the top of it. It's incredible the way it depicts both of them, because nobody comes off as like a one-note character. Even the minor characters, they all have so many dimensions and power behind them in these small moments. The way it lets you spend time with these people that support the Empire. It's like Deidre, and it's like, okay, we're going to follow her rise up. Like, I'm going to go against the people in my organization because I feel this is the right thing to do, even when they don't believe me. She's right in her own eyes. And Cyril Karn is one of the greatest characters this show has created. He is this fanatically incel, destructive guy who is so angry, believes in the police force so well that he's going to ruin his reputation to end end the rebel and Andor for what he's doing. That is so powerful and intense. And I'm like, wow, I cannot believe this show took the time to flesh out the bad guys like that and just show the chokehold the Empire has across everything. It's unbelievable. It is powerful. It's very anti-police, which, look, that's the point of the story. George Lucas was anti-police, so it's doing a great job at that. Like, the first arc is kind of like, the police are bad, don't trust them. The middle arc is just like, we're going to destroy the police's payroll. The third arc is kind of like, prisons are bad and we are abusing prisoners, which gives you something else to think about. And the fourth arc is just kind of like the wrap up of every story, but it all comes together beautifully. And I haven't even started talking about the cinematography, the hands-on feel of this. It feels vintage in a way, where we're not like using these big LED lights to show us the stuff. We use them on Coruscant sometimes, but everything's on location. Everything is just these beautiful colors connected together with these vibrant lights. It feels so lived in and it feels so real. It feels like we're not on a stage. And that's the problem I know a lot of people have with Obi-Wan, where it's like, this is just us in the back lot. But this show, we're on sweeping mountaintops, we're in the desert, we're all over these places. It looks beautiful and powerful and just sweeping in so many gorgeous ways. The directing is unique too. Like, we're actually doing some creative camera movements. We're actually doing this in a beautiful way. And the other thing too, like, the writing is so sharp. And that's the thing. I know a lot of people don't think about that. This show has maybe one good speech an episode, and every other piece of dialogue is fantastic. I can't sit here and quote every speech for you. Skarsgård gets some good ones. Serkis gets some good ones. Diego gets some good ones. I love it so much. And like, this is what George Lucas would love about this show, is just how it is so focused on showing you the fear that this police state can enforce. That is powerful. And I love the speech that Skarsgård gives towards the end of the show, where he's just like, what have I sacrificed for this? Everything. I sacrificed my entire life just so the people I'll never meet have a chance to be better off than I ever was. It's powerful. It's beautiful. It's intense. There's so much about that too. And another just like subplot that they deal with is this idea of like colonization in a sense, or just like there's the colonization thing where this like foreign object comes into this land, takes it over, and uses the resources. That's played out a few times, but also just like these colonizers taking indigenous children is kind of a theme of this too, and that's how they get radicalized into certain events, which is kind of the case for Andor. And look, I haven't even touched on Diego Luna yet. I've always said this guy's talented. Whatever he's doing, he knows how to do it well. When we see Rogue One, you understand that this guy has done some stuff. He is shady, he is crafty, he's also very talented. This version of Cassian is given a lot to deal with. You understand how he learns every motivation he gets, he sees every side of the coin. There's so much beauty about that, so much power behind the way he plays off of scenes, where it starts off with just him like, I'm trying to get by. Oh shit, I did something wrong in the moment that I'm dealing with. And then to him having the arrogance to do certain things, the cowardice to back away from certain things. There's so much for him to do, so much for him to learn, and how he learns to step up into leadership. You don't see this anymore. We don't see this kind of stuff presented anymore, where a character is allowed to be this flawed, this wrong a lot of the time, and learn his lesson so late in the game. We don't do that enough anymore. And that is a powerful thing to say, powerful thing to see. It is so well done. And where he ends up to where we're going to see him later in the show, amazing. And he plays it off so well in every scene. The fear he has, the way he learns how to be strong. We're watching the makings of a good spy, and that's really impressive. But honestly, there's a couple of standouts for me. Skarsgård's great. Stellan Skarsgård is, of course, I call him, he's like the Dark Knight of this universe. He is posing as somebody in the daylight, but in the shadows, he's secretly this man doing just nefarious schemes to get the Rebel Alliance into a situation. It's so fun to see him play well in a genre piece. I feel like he loves doing that, and he's so good at presenting that. The way he shifts into every scene is so powerful and so cool. But to me, the highlight, and somebody I could probably spend my entire lifetime talking about, is Genevieve O'Reilly's interpretation of Mon Mothma. Those sequences were my favorite. Because she is essentially the face of what the Rebel Alliance is going to be. She is a senator who is in a position where she is up front, but secretly she is funding and working on these things. So she has to get people of influence on her side, which she does in some beautiful ways, learn how to hide that, which I love the way, this is such a brilliant piece of writing that I would have never thought of, is how one of her old friends that she knows, who's a high up person in certain rankings of the Senate and all that stuff, they pretend they're having a very public affair that her wife and daughter are aware of as this weird relationship between the two. They pretend they're having this weird affair where these two people get together to do things that aren't in a marital bed. But what they're actually doing is talking about how they're getting funding for their Rebel Alliance. And I am just like, wow. That is such a small political identity where she's like, I will sacrifice my reputation, but uphold it at the same time just to make this matter. And the way she has to play with her daughter's ideas too. Oh my God. Like the way this whole thing is like, the Empire is essentially preaching what standard practices, like the old ways of marriage, the old ways of human connection. And you see Mothma's like, you don't have to do that. But her daughter's like, I like that. I like doing these things. Radicalization in it again in another form. But man, she's so good in this, so subtle. Just like the strongest character in this, just having to maintain composure at every moment. She looks so sexy in every scene. That's the other thing about this show. Every character is sexy. Every character is beautiful. You're watching hot people win in life, and that's what this is. It's awesome. But Genevieve is just given the best outfits, the best ensembles to play with. Just be composed at every moment, knowing at any second her entire existence could be uprooted and thrown down. Oh, does she do a good job of playing that? And I love every second of it. It is so strong. And yes, there are some ties to Rogue One. We see Forrest Whitaker show up as Saw. And that's another thing it plays with too. It's like there's different radical groups of rebels doing certain things. You got your hoity-toity fancy ones. You got your on the boots and the people doing like the dark destructive shit, but they all come together for the right cause. How does a show like this work, you know? It's one of those things, again, it's so bad to say, but we're so integrated into just mediocre content. 6 episodes of whatever that gives you enough to hold on to where you're like, there's something good in there, but it's not great. Where when a show comes along that spends an entire episode building to this climactic ending, look, the Prison Breakouts episode, I don't want to spoil it for people. It might be the greatest episode of anything Star Wars ever, because it is just this like pressure cooker moment where we're just slowly building up tension, seeing how we could fail, breaking out, and then the heart-wrenching ending of how that plays out. There's so much about that is just so strong and powerful. This show gets it. It knows how to build time. It's letting you flesh out the characters in a way that feels natural. You know, sometimes we get these shows where it feels like we are extending the script for no reason, extending the scene for no reason. There isn't a wasted moment in this show. Every moment matters. Every moment builds off the next one. We don't do them like this anymore, but I hope we do. I hope this is successful enough where we can get back to the way this feels, where we can talk about this stuff more, enjoy these kind of programs more, because they're so freaking amazing. And every character is so motivated and driven, and every sequence is beautifully shot and edited, and the music is so strong and powerful. I've said it before, I will say it again. Get Tony and Dan Gilroy to do the next James Bond, because they clearly understand espionage, they clearly understand genre, and as two guys who aren't really Star Wars fans, being able to make the best piece of Star Wars fiction, that's what you need to do. Like, everything about this show is perfect. It feels so beautiful. It just makes you afraid of police in ways you knew were possible, but presents it in a way that maybe not everybody would get until you see this thing. It makes the Empire scary. It makes the world scary. It makes George Lucas's vision proud. Like, I said this before too in other places. It's amazing how this year we have She-Hulk and we have Strange New Worlds and Andor that perfectly represent shows that are the intended vision of the creator's initial concept. Andor is that for Star Wars. When George Lucas is like, the stormtroopers are the bad guys, they are this radical nation terrorizing people, and we have a small militant faction trying to break them down. That's what Andor is. We're just watching one man struggle to learn his place in these two powerful organizations. And it is so intense and so beautiful. Please, please, please watch Andor. I don't know how the numbers are doing. I'd imagine they're not the strongest for any other show because it's a character that dies in Rogue One. Why would people watch it? I'll tell you why. Because when you start watching this, even if you binge it, I don't care. I don't binge stuff. It's not good to binge. But even if you binge it, you're going to sit back and be like, wow, we really don't make them like this enough anymore. And we should. We should make more things like this. So Andor, Season 1, I'm going to give a 10 out of 10. Now, thank you guys for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And as always, I will catch you in the next one. Have fun. Stay safe. May the Force be with you. But do they say that in this show? I don't remember if they do or not. Good luck.